The Leavitts have always presented the world with the image of the perfect family. But was it all a lie? After their divorce, Karoline Leavitt finally broke her silence, and what she revealed changed everything. The truth had been hidden for years, but now it was coming out. What was really going on behind closed doors? Stay tuned to find out. Karoline Leavitt and her former spouse had a relationship that initially seemed like the embodiment of a modern fairy tale. They met through mutual connections in the world of politics and media, where both had carved out successful careers. Karoline, a bright and ambitious individual, quickly connected with him over shared values and mutual goals. Their chemistry was undeniable, and soon their relationship became public. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple, both hardworking, determined, and always seen together at high-profile events, supporting each other's careers. The media portrayed them as the quintessential power couple, often lauding their accomplishments and the apparent harmony in their relationship. But, as it often happens behind closed doors, the reality of their marriage was far more complicated than what was visible to the public eye. What began as a connection built on shared ideals and ambitions gradually unraveled as hidden struggles and emotional distance started to take hold, leading to a difficult and ultimately public divorce. For years, Karoline Leavitt and her ex-husband presented themselves as the perfect power couple, dominating the public spotlight with their glamorous appearances and mutual career support. They were constantly photographed together at high-profile events, beaming with success and love, making their relationship appear like the epitome of modern partnership. From the outside, everything seemed picture-perfect, and they were often lauded for being a dynamic duo. But as time went on, fans began to notice something strange. The frequency of their joint appearances started to decrease, and when they did appear together, the once palpable chemistry between them seemed to fade. They no longer exchanged loving glances or shared the same energy they once had. Instead, there was a visible coldness between them. What had once been a warm and inseparable partnership now seemed strained, and fans were left in confusion. The first signs of trouble came when their social media posts, once filled with pictures of them together, began to dwindle. The public interactions that had previously been frequent grew less and less, and when they did make appearances at the same event, there was an air of awkwardness. The smiles were more forced, the conversations shorter, and the closeness that had once seemed so natural was now noticeably absent. It didn't take long for fans to start whispering. The speculation began, with rumors spreading about possible disagreements or even full-blown arguments behind closed doors. What had once been the picture of unity now seemed fractured, and people started to wonder if the cracks in their relationship had been there all along, quietly growing out of sight. Some fans claimed that the tensions between them were due to clashing career ambitions. Karoline, who had her own ambitions and goals, was reportedly growing more focused on her personal journey, while her ex-husband seemed more absorbed in his professional endeavors. This created a growing divide between them, each seemingly pulling in different directions. Others suggested that it wasn't just career differences but deeper personal conflicts, hidden frustrations that had been buried for years. As time passed, the distance between them became more apparent, and the public began to notice the subtle signs of strain. By the time the divorce was announced, the rumors had already been swirling for a while. The couple had stopped addressing the growing distance in their relationship, and the silence around it made people speculate even more. Were there infidelities? Were there financial disputes? Did they simply grow apart? Fans were left to piece together the puzzle, with each rumor offering a piece of a much larger, more complex story. The couple's inability to publicly address their issues only fueled the gossip, and the public was left wondering just how much of the perfect image had been an illusion. In interviews and behind the scenes, those closest to Karoline and her ex-husband revealed that the couple had been on the outs for some time. There had been arguments, small at first, but gradually growing in intensity as the years went on. Those who had witnessed their relationship firsthand shared that the couple had become masters of pretending everything was fine in public, while in reality, they were barely holding things together. The outward appearances, it seemed, were all part of an act to maintain their carefully constructed public personas. Fans, who had admired their relationship for years, now felt blindsided by the news of their split. What had seemed like an unbreakable bond had slowly been eroded by time, neglect, and the pressures of public life. As the divorce unfolded, Karoline's fans were left in shock, not only because of the breakup itself, but because it shattered the image of a perfect life that had been so carefully curated over the years. The couple's decision to remain tight-lipped about the real reasons behind their split only made things more mysterious. People began to wonder just how much had been hidden from the public and what else was there to uncover. Was this really the end of their marriage, or was it just the tip of the iceberg? With each new development, the mystery deepened. Fans who had once idolized the couple began to see them through a different lens. The perfect marriage they had once admired was now tainted by rumors of secrecy, lies, and unresolved issues. The more Karoline and her ex-husband stayed silent, the more the media and the public speculated, weaving stories about what had gone wrong behind the scenes. Every little detail seemed to be dissected, from their sudden absences to the cryptic comments made by mutual acquaintances. The public's fascination only grew, and so did the rumors. Was there more to this story than anyone had realized? In the aftermath of their split, many fans were left questioning the nature of the relationship they had once admired. The couple that had seemed inseparable now appeared as just another example of how things aren't always as they seem behind the glossy image of fame. As more rumors continued to surface, it became clear that what had once looked like a perfect partnership was, in reality, filled with tension, disappointment, and unspoken struggle. The perfect facade had finally cracked, and the truth, however messy or painful it may have been, was slowly coming to light. The moment everything changed for Karoline Leavitt came when she least expected it. For months, she had been sensing a growing distance between her and her husband. Their interactions had started to feel more strained, the conversations less genuine. They would go through the motions, attending events together, posting pictures on social media, but behind the smiles, something was clearly off. Karoline tried to ignore the nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach, chalking it up to stress or the pressures of their high-profile lives. After all, they were both busy, constantly in the public eye, and it wasn't unusual for their relationship to experience moments of tension. But deep down, Karoline knew something wasn't right. It all came to a head one night during a gathering that was supposed to be a relaxing evening for friends and colleagues. It was a charity event. Nothing too glamorous, but important nonetheless. Karoline arrived at the venue dressed in her usual elegant style, confident and poised as always. But the moment she stepped into the room, something felt off. The energy was different. The room was filled with people chatting and laughing, but there was a coldness that Karoline couldn't ignore. Her husband was standing in the corner, talking to a woman Karoline didn't recognize. At first, it didn't seem unusual. After all, he was always talking to someone at these events. But as she got closer, she noticed how close they were standing, how they were laughing a little too loudly. The tension in her chest grew, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And then, in the blink of an eye, she saw it. Her husband leaned in, and before Karoline could even process what was happening, he kissed the woman. It wasn't just a friendly peck on the cheek. It was a passionate kiss, one that made Karoline's blood run cold. Time seemed to freeze for a moment as her heart pounded in her chest. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what she had just witnessed. Was this a mistake? Was it something harmless? But deep down, Karoline knew. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some innocent act. This was betrayal. Her husband, the man she had trusted, the man she had built her life with, was kissing another woman right in front of her. The air felt thick, like the room had closed in around her. She felt like she couldn't breathe. Her first instinct was disbelief. She froze in place, staring at them, not knowing what to do. Was this really happening? Was this some cruel joke? She wanted to turn around and walk away, but her legs felt heavy, like they were made of stone. Her eyes locked onto the scene, unable to look away. The woman smiled at her husband, and he smiled back. Karoline's stomach turned, and her mind flooded with 1,000 questions. Who was this woman? How long had this been going on? Had he been seeing her behind her back? All these thoughts raced through her head, but the only thing she could hear was the pounding of her own heartbeat. It took everything in her to walk over to them. Her body moved almost automatically, driven by a surge of adrenaline. She felt like she was outside her own body, watching herself approach the couple. Her voice was shaking when she finally spoke. "What is this?" she demanded, trying to keep her composure, but even she could hear the anger and hurt creeping into her tone. Her husband looked up, his face going pale. The woman, caught off guard, took a step back, but Karoline didn't look at her. Her eyes were locked on her husband, the man she thought she knew. The room seemed to quiet as people began to notice the confrontation. Karoline's breath was shallow, her chest tight. She could feel her cheeks burning with humiliation, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable. The betrayal was like a physical blow, a weight that seemed to crush her from the inside out. Her husband stammered, trying to explain, but the words came out in a jumble, incoherent and desperate. He apologized, but it felt hollow, like he was saying the words because he knew he had to, not because he meant them. Karoline's heart shattered, but she couldn't stop herself from asking the question that had been lingering in her mind. "How long?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her husband hesitated. It felt like time had stopped, but Karoline could hear the tension in his silence. When he finally spoke, it wasn't the answer she wanted to hear. I'm sorry, Karoline," he said, his voice shaking. This just happened." "Not what you think." But Karoline knew. The way he looked at her, the way he tried to explain away his actions, it was all too familiar. She had heard these kinds of words before, and she knew they didn't mean anything. He wasn't sorry because he had hurt her. He was sorry because he had been caught. At that moment, Karoline felt something shift inside her. The anger was there, yes, but it was mixed with something deeper, something more painful. It was as if the illusion of their perfect life, the one they had spent years building, had crumbled in an instant. The perfect marriage, the ideal family, flawless public image, it had all been a lie. She felt foolish for not seeing it sooner, for turning a blind eye to the signs that had been right in front of her all along. But, more than anything, she felt betrayed. The man she had trusted with her heart, with her life, had turned his back on her in the most humiliating way possible. Her emotions boiled over, and she couldn't hold back the tears anymore. She turned to leave, but not before confronting him one last time. "I don't know who you are anymore," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I knew you, but I was wrong." And with that she walked away, her heart heavy with the weight of the truth. The betrayal was too much to bear, and she couldn't stay in that room, surrounded by people who had witnessed the unraveling of her life. The fallout from that night was immediate and widespread. The media was quick to pick up on the scandal, with the details of the confrontation spreading like wildfire. Fans were shocked, devastated by the news. Many had admired Karoline's marriage, seeing it as the ultimate example of what a relationship could be in the public eye. To watch it all come crashing down in such a public and painful way was almost too much for them to process. Some fans offered their support, expressing sympathy for Karoline and voicing their anger at her husband's actions. Others, however, were quick to judge, questioning why she hadn't seen the signs sooner. The pressure was mounting, and Karoline found herself at the center of a storm she hadn't been prepared for. But even in the face of all this, Karoline knew one thing: the truth was out. The perfect image was gone, shattered by her husband's betrayal, and there was no going back. The pain was still fresh, and the road ahead would be difficult, but she wasn't going to let this define her. She had been blindsided by the truth, but she was determined to take control of her own narrative and find a way to move forward. The fallout from that shocking confrontation was immediate and intense. Karoline Leavitt had always prided herself on her composure and public image. For years she had been the embodiment of grace and success, with her marriage and family life serving as a model for those who admired her from afar. But, in an instant, everything changed. The moment she discovered her husband's betrayal and confronted him at the charity event, the life she had known crumbled around her. The emotional breakdown that followed was something Karoline had never expected to experience, especially not in such a very public way. In the days after the incident, Karoline found herself in a whirlwind of emotions. At first, it was disbelief. She couldn't quite wrap her head around what had happened. The reality of it all was too much to take in. How could he do this? How could he betray everything they had built together? She had spent so many years nurturing their marriage, trying to make it work, believing in the image they had projected to the world. To have it all come crashing down because of a kiss, one she had witnessed firsthand, was a level of pain that Karoline had never anticipated. In the days following the confrontation, Karoline was forced to face the truth, a truth she had long avoided. The emotional weight of the betrayal sank deeper with every passing moment. She couldn't escape the pictures in her mind. The image of her husband locked in that kiss with another woman. The look of surprise and guilt on his face when she confronted him. The anger was still there, but it was mixed with a deep sadness that consumed her. She didn't know how to process it all. There were moments when she felt numb, as if she were floating outside her own body, disconnected from the reality around her. And then there were the moments of overwhelming grief, where the tears would come uncontrollably, the loss so profound that it felt like it was swallowing her whole. Karoline was used to being strong. She had always been the pillar for her family, the one who kept everything together. But now, she felt utterly lost. She couldn't even bring herself to speak to anyone at first. There were calls from friends, from family, but she couldn't pick up the phone. She didn't have the words to explain what had happened. She couldn't even explain it to herself, let alone to anyone else. All she could do was sit in silence, her mind racing with a million thoughts she couldn't even begin to sort through. The public reaction to the scandal was swift and unforgiving. News outlets were quick to pick up on the details of the confrontation. What had started as a simple charity event quickly became the story of the week, with every outlet speculating on what had happened between Karoline and her husband. They dissected every aspect of the confrontation, analyzing the body language, the words exchanged, and even the awkwardness that followed. Fans who had once idolized the couple were now left in shock, unable to comprehend how the perfect marriage they had once admired could fall apart so suddenly. Some were sympathetic, expressing their support for Karoline in her time of pain. Others, however, were quick to criticize her for not seeing the signs sooner, for not protecting herself from such a public betrayal. The judgment was harsh, and it wasn't just coming from strangers. Even her inner circle had their opinions. Some of her closest friends tried to be supportive, offering advice and emotional support, but others were more critical. They asked why she hadn't noticed the cracks in her marriage earlier, why she hadn't confronted the issues before they escalated to this point. The pressure of living under the public's microscope, of trying to maintain an image of perfection, made it even harder for Karoline to process her emotions. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if every flaw, every mistake she had made was being put under a magnifying glass for the whole world to see. In interviews, she began to open up about her feelings, but even then it was difficult for her to put her emotions into words. She was still in shock, still processing the deep hurt she felt. She talked about how the betrayal had shaken her to her core, how the trust she had placed in her husband was shattered in a single moment. "I never thought this would happen," she said in one of the interviews. "I thought we were beyond that. I thought we had built something solid, something real, and then, in one moment, everything changed." But it wasn't just the betrayal itself that was causing her pain. It was the way it happened, the way it unfolded in front of other people, in front of the cameras, in front of the public eye. Karoline had spent years cultivating the image of a perfect family, a perfect marriage. To have that image ripped away so publicly was more than just heartbreaking. It was humiliating. She felt as though the world was watching her fall apart, and she couldn't escape the feeling of being judged by everyone around her. She had always been the one people looked up to, the one who had it all together, and now she was nothing more than a headline for tabloids to tear apart. As the media frenzy continued, Karoline tried to find solace in the support of her family and friends, but even that was complicated. Some family members were incredibly supportive, offering her their love and comfort, while others were more distant, unsure of how to help or what to say. Karoline understood their hesitations. They didn't know how to fix something that had been broken so publicly, but it still hurt. She wanted to be strong for them, to show them that she was okay, but deep down, she wasn't. She wasn't okay at all. The anger was still there, a simmering frustration that would bubble to the surface at times. Karoline had always been a fighter, someone who could take on any challenge, but this betrayal felt like a battle she wasn't prepared to fight. She wasn't sure how to move forward, how to heal from the wounds that had been inflicted on her by someone she had loved and trusted. The love they once shared felt like a distant memory, something that had been lost in the wake of the scandal. For the first time, Karoline questioned everything. She questioned her decisions, her trust in her husband, and the image they had built together. The questions that haunted her weren't just about the betrayal. It was about why she had ignored the warning signs for so long, why she had allowed herself to be blinded by the facade of their perfect life. But as the days passed, Karoline began to accept that this was no longer about trying to salvage something that had been broken beyond repair. It was about finding herself again, about healing from the emotional wreckage and building a new life, even if she didn't know what that life looked like just yet. The fallout from the scandal wasn't just about the public's reaction. It was about Karoline's journey of self-discovery. It was about reclaiming her sense of identity and learning to live for herself, rather than for the image she had tried so hard to maintain. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she was determined to face it head-on, no matter how painful it was. The emotional breakdown was just the beginning of her healing process, and while it felt like the end of one chapter, it was also the beginning of something new. Karoline was ready to take control of her own narrative, even if it meant leaving the past behind.